Hello and welcome. My name is Mark Blatstein, the physician founder of Physician Pre-Sentence Report Service. Welcome, and we're now viewing my new website. The old one was about 10 years old, and this is its updated form, a lot easier to understand. You can go through it. There's my email, drmb@pprsus.com, phone, the name, phone number, 240-888-7778. Each of the drop-down boxes is pretty simple. Little boxes here to go through all the different topics. Quotes here from several federal judges. This is a very helpful, to kind of settle yourself, if you will, as a challenge as to what, we're going through, several interviews with clients, and then a list of blogs. And we're going to be going through, I'm going to do these two today. Ignoring the DOJ indictment is not really a very smart idea. And then preparing for your pre-sentence interview. And I have a little fruit fly here. And so I'm going to jump over to that first one. And today I'm going to be discussing PPP fraud, payroll protection, PPP fraud, money laundering. These are separate cases. Any kickback statutes violations, Medicare, Medicaid fraud. The Department of Justice is an equal opportunity indicter. They don't care who you are, and public corruption. And so what you don't want to do, we have the ostrich here and put your head in the sand. And, it's not that simple. Putting your head in the sand doesn't mean that this stuff is just going to go away. You need legal representation. I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer. I have enough years in school. I don't want any more time in school. And so ignoring, either the target letter rumors, which is what I did. I thought it was just kind of crazy because I had rumors. It was like 2006. I'm grateful 2010 was able to get my medical license back, but I thought this was all a big, problem that was not really a problem. You need legal representation. And, there's a series of questions. I don't know if I'll go through them or have time today, but, you need to, it's like a marriage. Not every attorney is going to be a good fit for you. And so, when you need legal representation, is this you? Does it sound familiar? Did you get a visit at your office or at your home? I started with a 6 a.m. knock at my front door, and at 8 a.m., while I was still at home, they were showing up at my office. And so you have choices, read and weep, if you will. The story of your life, the Department of Justice has published in the form of your indictment, and it's been released nationwide, worldwide. Does it reflect who you are accurately? And as I started by saying, it doesn't matter. They do not care if you're a healthcare executive. Your system had to pay over $5 million in kickbacks, or they got you for doing that. If you're a single physician or dentist, it was $6 million for PPP loan fraud. If you are a business, involved in public corruption for an environmental crime, almost 2.5 million. Another PPP COVID-19 loan fraud. This is 2024, and they're still prosecuting $11.2 million. Synergy Healthcare. This is a healthcare systems, CEO, Medicare, Medicaid fraud. So you're not immune from the Department of Justice because they have a conviction rate approaching 98%, which usually includes some prison time. So it'll be a little hard to see these individual cases, but once you go to my website, you click on it, these actually open up. So I'll click one to show you. This will be the healthcare system. So we'll click on it and it will open up. So you can actually see, the actual press release. Suffolk Services Provider pleads guilty to healthcare fraud. And so let's go back. And so the company's records were falsified, incomplete, failed to comply with basic Medicaid requirements. Synergy submitted documents with forged signatures. You just can't do that. $700,000 worth. They forged the signatures of a registered nurse, $50,000 worth. These schemes totaled to $1.3 million. They have the Department of Justice, DOJ, HHS, put together a white collar task force, and they have incredible analytics, which are software that begins to look at billings that go outside of the norms for your geographic region. In 2024, I've already brought it up, PPP loan fraud. This is prosecuted for 11.2 million. An overview. This loan fraud was under PPP. Then he laundered the money. He spent the proceeds, among other things, for buying 25 residences and 2 luxury cars for personal investments. And then what not to do. After being charged, he continued money laundering, which means the feds were watching you, by selling the residence that he acquired using those funds. So again, we can go back. to here, to there, right? Nevada man convicted and boopy doo. And this is, that particular case. We'll close that out and we'll come to the next one. This was a public corruption one. It was dumping. It was bribery and wire fraud. And it had something to do with it was thick concrete, cement, rebar, tiles, bricks, large concrete, soil. He pled to one count conspiracy to bribery and one count commit wire fraud. A little complicated for what I know. So this is a single practitioner, PPP fraud, 6.3 million. And then there was a second, I guess you went for 2 rounds of PPP loans. It was strictly limited to businesses with 300 employees, but he had employees of more than 300 individuals. So we'll click on it here. And again, you can get to this through my website, Southern Cal, dental practice. And he had more than 300. I had to go through all of this, and I don't know that I can find it that fast, which I cannot, find it that quickly, that where he had more than 300 employees. But suffice it to say that he did. Here we have another healthcare system. They have to pay over 5 million in kickbacks. Where he got kickbacks is the anti-kickback violation statute. Law prohibits healthcare providers, including those that provide laboratory services, from paying kickbacks in the form of commissions to third parties, blah, blah, blah. And this was a False Claims Act case. Again, we can follow it to that particular vendor. So you have choices. So your second choice is to begin interviewing attorneys. That's why one of the first things I said is that, or I recommend, is you need an attorney. And this is because this will be one of the most important decisions in your life. And I prepared 14 or so questions for you to consider. With the first being is that they need to practice federal criminal defense in federal court, followed by, do they have experience with cases like yours? And I have both a video and in print of about 14 questions that you should ask. And I say this because I had a client and he came to me after he was sentenced. He's here on the East Coast. His attorney was on the West Coast, but he had a personal injury attorney. And it's okay to have an attorney that does state and federal cases, but somehow or another, his state cases exceeded his federal case knowledge. And so while I was able to get him a best possible outcome at the last minute, I got very lucky. It was only after he, had to present himself to prison, he was able to self-surrender. And so if you do nothing, that document, the indictment, is all that your judge is going to be able to read to sentence you. So consider it your brand, kind of like BMW, Tesla, and the Olympics and their circles. This is all their brands are going to represent who they are. And to your judge, your indictment is going to be your brand. And this is your moment to take your time, be introspective, and begin drafting. It's your autobiography, your narrative. And if you don't take the time to begin to draft your narrative or your story or your autobiography of who you are before you get to your pre-sentence interview, then all your judge is going to know about you is what the Department of Justice has written in your indictment, which is going to make up your pre-sentence report. Judges have been doing this a long time, and they already know the Department of Justice, they want a conviction. The prosecutor wants you in jail because they need to protect society from you, and possibly, they also maybe want this to be something that can enhance their career as they move forward in life. Your attorney, judges know, are paid to say nice things about you and keep you out of jail. But the one person in life that the judge knows nothing about is you. And how are you going to go ahead and change that? The judge knows that crimes don't happen in a vacuum. And the only way that you can influence or at least impact the judge is by drafting a narrative, which is your opportunity to share your story. If it happened, if in fact it comes from childhood to the event that brings you to the courtroom today, where you accept responsibility and have remorse for the victims that you've harmed without making any excuses, then so be it. Your third choice, possibly, this is strategic, is trial or plea. But it's important to understand several things. One, believing that you're innocent may not be enough. You may be innocent, but the Department of Justice has a 98% conviction rate. And so should you go to trial and lose, the prosecutor may want a longer sentence. That's not meaning that you don't go to trial. It's just meaning that if you go to trial, you understand that that they may be out for a pound of flesh. The judge may or may not comply with that, but this is a strategic conversation between you and your counsel. If you decide to go to trial, don't do what Sam Bankman-Fried did. Don't aggravate the court, the judge. Don't witness tampering or nothing, anything like that. You want to at least be respectful throughout the entire time, because you still can impact the court and the judge in your behalf through your narrative. You haven't burnt that bridge. That's what I've written here. Should you lose, all is not lost, because your personal narrative can still sway the court. Remember, honey and vinegar. Don't anger the court. Next is preparing for your pre-sentence interview. You can only do this, but only if you're willing, because it includes reading your indictment and realizing that the Department of Justice, they have a conviction rate that's 98%. These are the non-law components that are, for most part, not part of a traditional law defense, meaning that I'm not a lawyer, but the parts of the law that we can influence are the non-legal parts. By helping you write your autobiography story that explains your life and your life story, your history, and how you came to this point in your life that brought you into this courtroom. Consider what you would like to do when you're released and how you would like to prepare for that day, which translates into a release plan. When I had to go, I got indicted, I had a felony, I was ill prepared, which is why I transitioned from patient care several years or more than that back to working with all of you today, because I didn't know any of this. The judge wanted to speak to me and he asked me if I had anything to say, and I was dumbfounded. And there were so many things I did wrong, which is in the YouTube that's going to follow this one, that'll go into a little bit more detail. But I didn't have a release plan, and that's what the judge wanted to know. What am I going to do to plan so I don't go back to their courtroom? What goes into the package that makes up your comprehensive file for your pre-sentence interview? That's going to be on a following YouTube, which I'm going to record when I'm done with this one. An inspirational and universal perspective on approaching life and its obstacles by Admiral McCraven. I think this is a worthwhile listen, as prison is temporary. This thing is only, I think it's 10 minutes, maybe 14 minutes. Admiral McCraven is the guy that got bin Laden, but more than that, if you're everyone handles this confrontation differently. I was panicked to like nobody's business, but we each handle this kind of stress differently. But when people are shooting at you and he's training, the Marines to deal with battle, I would imagine that's a pretty stressful event also. And in going through this, he talks about Mandela, and Malala, the woman in Pakistan that was shot on a school bus. And as he goes through the events, as he's talking to a graduating class, he goes through 10 lessons that made an impact, and made an impact with me, and I think it would make an impact with you. I appreciate you taking the time out of the day to listen to this, and I hope you found it helpful, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Have a good day and stay safe.